We're down in the dark room, but it's a dim room. We work under tungsten light down here, so you know, in any basement where you have a laundry room, spare area, all we need is a bit of water and some power and a nice humid environment around 45%. So today we're going to make the 4 prints. So we're going to start off with the Radiohead image by Rob Duchin, and I've pre-coated the paper, so we're ready to go with the paper. So this is a silver gelatin negative. It's really quite unique. There's maybe only 2 of us in the world that are making these type of films. So this film could, I've made lith prints from it, and now we're going to make a gum bichromate print. So basically, what we have to do is register the film or punch it, which we're going to use this device here, with the paper so that we can do 2 coats. One coat's going to be the first coat, which is burnt umber, Daniel Smith burnt umber, and we're going to give it a nice hit to lay down the first tone. So anyways, I'll go get the paper. Once again, we're using Hahnemühle Platinum Rag paper. This is half the sheet. This staining on the back will come off because it's just unexposed. So what we're going to do is we have to have the negative sit on top of the paper, and I like punching on the long side if I can. So I'm going to punch it right here to get rid of these flaps. So you take the system. Now, not everybody's going to own a Strosser punch system, but if you can find one of these in any graphic arts place, it's well worth the money. So now the film has been punched with the paper, and we're ready to put the pins on. Okay, so now paper coated. This is a plate burner, Newark plate burner. Once again, you know, you can make push pins, and you can use an old Kodak contact frame. You can take your combination and you can go outside to the sunlight. As long as you had a light meter where you knew what the overall sunlight is, and over time you would say, well, I've got this amount of exposure on my light meter right now, and it takes 5 minutes to expose in the sun. As long as you get that amount of light, you know it's 5 minutes. Anyways, this is a daylight system, metal halide. The Kelvin temperature is way up. So what we have here is 3 little transfer pins. And these transfer pins match the Strosser pins. So these are Strosser pins. And there's 1 circular one and 2 oblong. And basically, we put the circular pin in the middle, and this stabilizes the center point. And we put the 2 oblongs on either side. Now, there is some movement, a little bit, for the film to move this way, but there's no movement going this way. So the oblong pins work nicely with the center circular. This system is something I used back in the day to do photo montage before Photoshop was ever created. So now we've got the paper, the pins, and the negative registered. Just like a pizza, it goes into the system. We drop down the glass. We turn on the vacuum system. And I like to let the vacuum come up, and then just very minimal, very minimal. You don't need to have full vacuum on, because you know all you're doing is compressing the film to the gum itself. So, and I have a standard time of 120 units, and it's the vacuum's on, and now it's exposing. So now the gum arabic is suspending the pigment, which is the burnt umber pigment from Daniel Smith. And mixed in with that is ammonium dichromate. And ammonium dichromate is the sensitizer agent in this combination. The light, when it goes through the negative, hits the gum pigment dichromate solution, and there's a physical reaction with the dichromate. And with more light, the dichromate wants to have a physical reaction with the gum, and it hardens. And therefore, where there's more light going through the negative, the gum hardens, and if you keep on exposing this, I mean over a period of an hour, if you took away the negative, you'd just end up with burnt umber. It would just harden 100%. So the highlight area of the negative is holding back light. So we over a period of time, we come up with a balance, and the balance is 120 units. It could be different in any dark room. It doesn't matter. You'll find out what your balance is. So this is a wash-off process. So the next step is, after this is exposed, we go into water. And the water starts releasing, softening the gum, arabic, and pigment solution, and where there's no hardening effect of the light, it will wash off, which creates the positive image. Okay, so we're going to take the film off the paper, and we're going to put the film back into the sleeve for our next printing. You can't really see it, but I can actually see the outline of the musician here. So basically, we're going into water, and we're rocking a little bit. This is, I buy distilled water for the very first bath, regular tap water for the second bath, and then for the final bath, regular tap water. So, excuse me. What I love about gum bichromate printing is that it's water. Like, there's no chemicals, there's no secret little formulas. It's distilled water that everybody knows how to get. And then, you know, you can buy these brushes. Remember I was saying about that little stain on the back of the paper? I'm just going to brush it off now as we wash out the print. So now, we're not going to sit here and watch this do it, because it'll be like watching paint dry. But what's happening is, it's face down. You want to make sure that there's no air pockets on the print, but you can see the brown pigment coming out, and you can start seeing the image. So I already know that that's looking pretty good. So we're going to move on and start exposing more prints. We're going to do the Frank Ogenfeld, the third image of David Bowie. I have a bunch of negatives inside here, but I'm going to use the negative that is basically the main image negative, and for my first exposure. So I'm going to get the paper again. Now, this one, the film has already been punched because I've done this before. So I'm just going to make sure I get my punch position correctly. So I'm going to actually put the film over top. Make sure that there's a nice Polaroid rebate around here that I have to make sure I keep into the image. So you just have to kind of make sure that it fits on the paper. Put a small little dot where you want to have the center punch go. It's right there. You walk over to the punch. There we go. And now that's in position. And now we get the traveling pins, again from the plate burner. And we put these traveling pins into position. And so right now we're developing out the print in water. The second print is being exposed on the plate burner. And everything's working nicely. You put the whole combination in the plate burner, turn the vacuum on. Very minimal vacuum so that we're not sticking the film to the gum. So I'm backing it off a bit and exposing. So we're going to see slowly over here. Now we're exposing the second one. I want to clean off the back of the print again with the brush. And you can see now quite clearly the image of the musician is there. I'm going to put it in the second bath now. And there's very little creative play here at the very big beginning coating, because what you're trying to do, and what I'm trying to do here, is lay down a ochre or a burnt umber or a sepia, but basically the base image is the flesh tone, is the basis for the image. And so I'm not going to do any special brush techniques or anything on this very first set. So from here on in, we're just basically washing out to a point where we want to leave behind an image, and we'll dry it. And once we have all four coated, printed, and washed out, we'll dry them, and then we'll put on the second coat. Okay, so we brought the print over to the final wash, and basically, this is a stage lit shot. So right now I don't see a lot of brown gum coming out, so I'm getting pretty happy with this. So you can notice that we've only been in here for less than 10 minutes, and I think quite reasonably we're there. Like, the highlights are completely washed out on the guitar, the side of the face, and in the highlights, and we're going to end up with lots of room for the next coating to come through. So I would say this one's done. So we're going to put it in the dryer to get it dry for the second coating. We're going to turn it on. We're not going to turn the heat on because I don't want the paper to shrink. And I have to say, I don't normally do this, where I normally work with 10 or 15 images in a day and let them air dry. But because of getting this video, I want to get my prints dry for the second coating. So this is something I normally don't do. Third image, Tom Petty. Once again, we've already pre-punched this. So we've got a mark here on the paper that produces a good position. And so I'm just going to punch. If you don't understand the punching system and everything, it's not a big deal. Over time, if you ever started doing this, you would realize why the registration is so important. Some people will just visually register over a light box. That's just not the way I do it. I like to have the pins in exactly the right position, paper right where I want it. there goes the pins on top. And this is a silver gelatin film. The last one we did, the David Bowie, was a inkjet film. This one actually is a silver film. Now, I found on this image that the negative, when I did it, was a bit hot. So I'm going to increase my exposure because I want more pigment to stay down. So the longer I expose, the more pigment will stay down. The less I expose, the less pigment. And it's a bit of a balancing act. So right now I increase my time, but that is just playing with it over time. You learn that some of these things you have to do. So we're going to bring over the Bowie image by Frank Okenfeld III. And we've got some brown coming off, which is good. We bring it into the main washout area. And right now, the density is right where I want it to be. Because my next exposure is going to be quite a bit heavier. So I'm just going to put this into the dryer again. We have 3 in the works. We'll do the last one and then we'll move to coating, and I'll show how to coat the okay, so we're doing the final film. You can see it's a little bit flimsier. This is Pictorico, or ink press is what I use. And Pictorico or ink press you can buy at B&H. You can buy it at Vistec. I buy my ink press at Vistec. They always seem to have stock for me. And it's relatively inexpensive. It has to go through an Epson printer. But for gum bichromate work, the advantage of having a silver negative over a Pictorico negative, I haven't seen the reason yet. And the silver film is about 10 times as expensive. So, you know, there are reasons why we would use Pictorico. So we're going to do our last image. I'm going to go back down to the 120 unit for the exposure. I've done this image before many times, and I know that the beautiful brown tint underneath the blue that I'm going to add on afterwards really looks nice with this image of Brendan. So we're going to just get this ready. The last image is soaking in the water, and as you can see, it moves pretty fast. So you know, you could do multiple prints in a day and do the second coat the next day. That's how I normally work. I normally work that way. I'd rather work that way than trying to do 2 different coatings in one day, only because it's the dryer is going non-stop. That's that. Okay, so I've got the one exposure going. We've already gone through the Radiohead, the David Bowie image. There's Tom Petty. And I want to leave a lot of the image on this one because I kind of screwed up when I made the original separation on this image, where I was making it for litho printing, which is a very defined process that I do. And for litho printing, you need a very contrasting negative. But then I think I went a little bit overboard on the contrast. So now I'm having trouble when I'm making a gum bichromate of the same negative. My negative is a little bit too contrasty, so I have to pound the living crap out of the exposure so that the skin tone retains the density. I've found in these paper processes like gum bichromate, platinum palladium, The D Max or the blacks are not as deep as what a silver gelatin print will be. So you have a lot of leeway by pushing in a lot more tone onto the highlights. And what's really beautiful about this process is that when I process this one out finally, I'm not going to put any water or tension on the highlight area. I'm going to put all the tension on the surrounding area. And when I mean tension, I mean water or any brush movement that will release the pigment on the outside area, which will leave the highlights still there and open up the shadows a bit by washing out the shadows. So it's kind of funny. With this process, you can wash out shadows, you can wash out mid-tone, you can hit your whites to white if you want. I generally don't like whites in my prints, but that's my problem, not anybody else's. But the reality is with gum printing, with the water, you have a lot of control of the negative that you make. So if you're making negatives for gum bichromate, any normal negative will work. So, for you people that shoot large cameras, you just make a normal negative and you can strip it together with film like we're doing here and make contact prints and make gum prints all day long. Making enlarged negatives with an Epson printer, I use QTR program, which you can buy online. Roy Harrington, I believe, sells this program. It's a little bit complicated for guys like me because I'm not really a mathematical geek. I'm more of a printer, but once you got it set up, it's foolproof. You can't make a mistake. As long as you put the QTR curve on for, let's say, a normal negative or a normal platinum palladium, you should be able to print gums all day long. So there's an old saying, if it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. So if it looks like a negative and it acts like a negative, when you hold it up to light, you can see all the shadows and highlights coming through, it probably is a decent negative. Okay, so we've got some dried out prints. First coating, once again, I wouldn't do this all in one day, but now for this workshop, this demo, I'm going to show a one-day double hit. So there's David. First coat, ochre, and I think my next coat on him will be blue, but I think I'm going to mix in a bit of red. And don't ask me why. I like mixing in a little bit of red in a lot of things that I do. Maybe it's because of the flesh tone idea, I don't know. So we got one set of blue. This for sure can have the same color as that one, so I'm going to do that. And here's Tom. I want to put a double hit of oak, raw umber, and red on this one. So I want to keep this one really warm. And so I'm not going to put blue on this one. So I'm going to do a different color for that one. And the Brendan Meadows image is drying right now, which I know is going to have the blue. So we'll start by mixing up the pigment for coating for the blue. Well, let's do the Tom Petty first. We'll do the Tom first because we're still waiting for the last one to dry. So Tom's going to be a mixture of red and umber. Basically the same color twice. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. Now this will create a color contrast, a modulation in the print that once you deepen it up, it creates even D-Max. And I know that the silver purists will howl with what I'm saying here, but you know what? Screw them. When you add gum on top or a second hit, what you're trying to do is create D-Max into a piece of paper that really doesn't allow for great D-Max. So the great Irving Penn did all his multiple hit platinum palladiums back in the 70s, 80s, and he was a genius. You know, I wish I met him 25, 30 years ago, because I think what we're doing here would fall right into what he liked, which was experimenting with multiple coats on prints to make the best print possible. So you see there was a bit of leaking there, no big deal. So a print takes 3 mils, so we're going to just mix up for one coating on 1620. So I'm going to start with 4 mils total, which is a little bit more than I need, but you know, I'd rather waste a bit of pigment than not. So we're going to go to 4 mils of brown, and then we're going to go to the red, and we're going to add in 2 cc's. I'm calling them mils, but they're actually cc's. So I'm adding red into the umber. Okay? Now, with gum printing, I found the secret is shaking the living crap out of the pigments, and you can see it's messy as hell, but that's life, and that's my life. We're going to add in the gum bichromate, or the gum, sorry. So I put in 6 cc's of pigment. I'm going to put in about 30% more, or 8 cc's of gum. And I'm going to match the dichromate now, and this is the one that you have to be very careful with. I'm going to match the dichromate to the pigment. So 6 cc's, so I'm going to put 6 cc's of dichromate in. Ammonium dichromate is what I'm using, 10% solution for you geeks out there. So there's the ammonium dichromate. Pour it back into the bottle. See, I'm using a common shot glass, dollar store containers. And now the secret is to shake the living crap out of the components. You want to get the dichromate, you want to get the pigment and the gum all mixed together really well. I made a lot of mistakes in the first few years by not realizing how important this stage was, and for other gum printers, I don't know if they found the same thing, but sure as hell in my darkroom, if I don't shake this crazy and get a real good mixture, it's not going to work to what I think. So now, there's my burnt umber with red, and it's now a really dark brown blood red. I'll bring my print over top, my foam brush, Home Depot. I've gotten rid of the corners on the Home Depot foam brush, and just get it a little bit damp and tip it in, and you can see that it's waving a bit. It's because we're drying it all in one day, and as I told you, I normally don't work like this, so I would come in the next day and this print would be perfectly flat, ready for the next coating. So I put on the Home Depot coating with the Home Depot brush, and you notice there's no real crazy Japanese music going on behind me and I'm praying for every stroke that I put down here. It's pretty easy, and it should be easy, and it should be done fast. So there's my nice brush, and I put a final smooth coat, so that's got the red and the burnt umber on it. I just washed out the brush, and I'm ready for the 3 prints where we're putting the blue on. So I'm figuring about 3 cc's per 16 by 20 print. So I'm going to need 9 cc's, but I'm going to err and go around 12. And I think I'm probably going to go 8 blue, 4 red. And then I always like to put a bit more gum, so I'm going to go about 16 to 20 on the gum, and then I'm going to match the ammonium to as much as I put here. So we're going to draw out for 3 prints. We have 3 prints to do. These lids get pretty tight. Phthalo blue, this one here is probably my #1 pigment that I use more than any pigment whatsoever. It's the go-to pigment, and it's the green shade. So I'm going to bring it down to 8 cc's because I'm going to go with 12, so I have enough. So I'll bring this down to 8. Pour it in. Clean that tip. I really should be using a secondary unit. By the way, you get these things from any medical supply store. May ask you why the hell you want them, but they're quite easy. So I'm going to go 8 units to 4. So there's 4 red. So now I have a total of 12 cc's in there. And once again, we go backwards. You know, this chart that you see on the wall behind me is the color wheel. And we are working, as I said before, with color light here and film, but we're also working with pigments, which now is in the Munsell system. So there's a little bit of leeway that you have to work with by understanding color, but it's pretty straightforward. So here we're going to go, if we're going to go 12, so I'm going to, there's a 10, I'm still short, I'm going to go around 18. So I put 18 units of gum in versus 12 units of pigment versus 12 units of ammonium dichromate. So in my workflow, I always match the ammonium dichromate to my amount of pigment, and I just pull up 12 units there and mix it in. So close this off. The ammonium dichromate is a very caustic chemical that you should not have children around when you're working with this stuff. It's the one dangerous thing that we're using. Okay, now we're ready to go. Oh, that was dumb. That was really stupid. But that's what the paper towels are for, to protect from mistakes. And I go through tons of paper towels in this place, and you can see my work surface is already getting colored up. And you know what? Who cares? You know, that's what we do. It's, you know, if it stains your tabletops, you know, over 30 years, the tabletop will become a nice piece of art. So the goal is to get this 3 units mixed nicely together, and I can't talk enough about this part of it right here, because in the past I was getting flaking, I was getting fish eyes, plus density marks, and it all boiled down to this pigment mode that I'm doing right here. Okay, so now we just open it up, and there's a nice blue. So it's kind of funny, it was a blue-green shade, and I've added some red in, so it's kind of like playing against color theory, but I happen to know that this blue works really nicely. So we put the print down, the Home Depot foam brush, and you know what? I'm going to mark the image. Because once you put the second coat on, you may not be able to see it and know what it is. So this is Radiohead. So that once it's coated, this is a very dominant color, this blue. And I mean, I should be able to see what's below, but there's no guarantee. So I'm going to be very careful that I know when I'm laying down my next film on top of this, which one is which. And how do I know this? By making mistakes. I've made these mistakes before. And you notice that, once again, I'm making fun of these workers that obsess about this part of it. Just lay it down. Just get the stuff down. Don't make a critical mission about taking 10 minutes to lay this down. Now, this last brush that I'm using is a very expensive brush, and it's got a beautiful tip right at the edge that when you lay when you get it all in one stroke like that, the coating goes down real nice. And now I'm just going to continue through with the 2 other images, so we'll stop here and move on once we get this done. We now have dry gum, and you can put your hand on it, and I can now see the underlying layer, but now I have that layer of ochre and red, and all the other prints that we coated are sitting ready to expose. So we're not going to bore you with repeating with the long exposure washout. What we're going to do is we're going to expose each one of these now, and then we're just going to move to the final washout stages, which is really the only change that you can make with the kind of water dodging and burning. So right now we're just going to start exposing, and it's just a repeat of what you've already seen. So we'll just start back up when we get to the final washout stage. First image, Tom Petty's ready to do the second washout. I'm just going to take the second image here and get it into the water. But as you can see, we're pounding through these images now. Tom has been sitting there for 10 minutes and he's almost ready to go. So I'll put him in here, the second image, and we're getting close. We're ready to wash out the final washout, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to see something here as I do this. Okay, so there he is. You can see how warm this is. I'm pretty sure that when we dry down, it's going to go less red. So the last stage is where you start revealing what's below. And you do that with water. So you can see me Just put a bit of water on there and the hair just popped out a bit. I'm trying to stay away from the skin tone because my original negative was pretty hot. So I just want to see some tone come through. So I'm going to use a brush. And I'm just going specifically on the outside with this image, not on his face or skin tone. And you can see the pigment kind of washing off there. Because it's ochre on ochre, it's hard to see. But you see that just right there, the pigment just came off in that section. And this kind of is the brushwork that I learned taking a workshop years ago with Christina Anderson. It's a little bit different. She does a lot of brushwork. I tend not to do as much, but for sure you can see like there's that color coming out. I want to give some reference point in this photograph, and right now that's pretty well done. I don't want to go any lighter on the face. The forehead is getting a bit bright, and there we go. I think that's a beautiful portrait by Bryce Duffy of an incredible musician. Okay, so we have the last image exposing. We have two prints in one in the distilled water, one in the regular water, and one exposing. So we're almost finished here, and then we'll finish off. So here is Radiohead, and now we're starting to get somewhere. And this is where you're going to see the image below come through. So, and you do that with water. And I don't know if we're capturing this with the video camera right now, but I can see the ochre in behind and the blue sitting on top, and I can see the ochre in behind. And I just popped, I don't know if you noticed that, I just popped these highlights and they just washed out lovely. And really there's just this nice duotone effect. So we'll just lay this down again, flip it over, and you know, we try to clean as we go. I never hit the back of the print, and I've seen so many people teach printing that sit there and they push the print down from behind. That's probably the biggest mistake you can make in printmaking when you're dealing with wet paper, because it bruises the other side. So I use a brush on the back of the print, and that is putting pressure on the front of the print. I do not go bang, bang, bang with my fingers, because if you do, you'll end up with, especially with silver gelatin, you'll end up with bruising. Okay, so I think we're almost done here. I've got nice color coming through, streaming through. I'm just going to put a pop on his head. And right away you saw that. I hope you did. And then a pop there, pop. And that's it. And there's Radiohead by Rob Duchin, Toronto, Collider Films. I think it's a wicked shot. So now we're looking inside the thing, and Tom Petty's looking back out at us, and I think that's super cool. So we put the second one in, and we're just going to let these air dry overnight. They're now prints. And you know, I mention C prints and inkjet prints all the time, and I kind of make fun of them, and I really don't make fun of them because I do them all the time myself. They're very valuable. I see the C print and the inkjet as a contemporary style of print for contemporary uses. These prints I see differently. I love these prints, but you know, I realize there's room in this world for both all types of printmaking, but these are, in my opinion, quite lovely. Okay, so this one of Frank Okefels is just still in its infancy, but we can play with the water here. And I'm bringing in some tone, popping the face highlights and letting the ochre come in below, and it immediately just pops up. Now, on this one, I'm just going to put it face down for a second, and you know, you don't get it right every single time, but that's why I make extra prints all the time, because you never know if you're going to get a winner or it's going to be 100% there. But what we're going to do is we're going to use a brush, which is just a Japanese whisk brush. I'm not really sure where I got this. I think I got this at a Christina Anderson workshop that I took about 10 years ago or 8 years ago at Project Basho in Philadelphia. And so with this brush, I'm going to do what I normally don't do, which is brush work. So we see the blue. I want to get some of that underlying brown. So you can see the blue just coming off. And I just brushed it out. Brushed out on that, creating almost the solarization. Look. There's kind of a thing here that I'm not really sure is in Frank's original. So this little glitch right here may be enough to bounce this print. But until I see the original again and realize if it's supposed to be like that, I'm going to use the brush, and I want to get the eyes popping. And there we go. That's a duotone print. I do think there's a screw up right there, but I'll figure that out on the next version. Okay, so we're on the last one. And this one I'm going to work heavy with the brush. And I want to get rid of that circular pattern there that's developed. And that was, I think, due to an air pocket. So I'm going to use a lot of brush work on this one and a lot of water work. And you can see as we water around Leon, we're getting the ochre below. And I want all the highlights to show the image below. And now you can see on this jacket the brown ochre coming through, and we're going to leave the blue on his pants to increase that. And we're not going to really pop on his face very much because right now it's quite beautiful. So we'll just put a bit on his hands, you know, and that section right here bothers me, but you know, we'll kind of make that disappear. And once again, we don't touch the back of the print. And at this stage, you can see the blue and the brown mixing together. It's really quite beautiful. It's really right where it should be. The water has an effect of creating contrast. And you do need this. I never would have thought that when I started, but then I realized that this was the weapon of mass destruction, this last little stage when you're mixing duotone. And it allows you to build up contrast. Okay, so I think we're going to finish here by hitting the highlights. And I kind of like use some separation around the object, which is the musician himself, where I make a lighter tone around, and with a bit of brush work, do a little bit of dodging, which indeed increases contrast in areas that otherwise would be just flat. And there we go. Leon Bridges, Brendan Meadows image, quite lovely. As you see, in a day we did 4 different images. I would not recommend trying to do both coats in one day. I would try to do more images, one coat, and then go the second day and do the coats. A lot easier to do. This was a little bit stressing ourselves out trying to do this. You know, gum is a lovely process, and I hope some of you have learned something here. Thank you.